For me, Sifu was one of the best games of 2022. Being met with critical high scores upon its release, Slowclap no doubt has started work on the sequel. While I'd be happy with a continuation of the same story, I feel I have a good pitch for not one, but two completely different directions the sequel could go in. Now, while I'd love to add a large open world with top-of-the-line third-person shooter mechanics and driving, we have to remember Slowclap is still a relatively small indie company, so I'll be bearing that in mind with the pitch. Let's begin. While Sifu's Chinese setting was visually appealing and fun to play through, the game's core mechanics don't strictly rely on China or Kung Fu. So let's mix it up. Here are two archetypes that would dictate the setting, fighting style, and cultural influences. Meet Tien, the lightweight Thai fighter, and Danny, heavyweight British boxing champion. I'll start with backstories, then describe the gameplay that separates it from Sifu. Let's start with Tien.
Come on! Back Muay Thai! Ah!
Tien grew up in the street markets of Bangkok, Thailand. Being an orphan from an early age, he had to become a competent thief to survive. At the age of 9, he was fluidly leaping between rooftops, scaling walls, and jumping from great heights, granting him quick ways to escape when caught stealing. As he grew up, his heist became more ambitious, learning from some older kids that there was a priceless Buddhist statue at their Muay Thai gym. One night, Tien snuck into the gym and hid in the rafters waiting for classes to end. Watching the training below, he was soon captivated and forgot about the statue. After class ended, he spoke to the instructor, admitting his original intentions and begging to be trained in Muay Thai. The instructor was taken back by the boy's honesty and agreed to train him, seeing it as an opportunity to set him on a better path. After a few years of training, Tien was proving to be quite the fighter, showing more discipline than the other students. He had also grown close with his teacher, who spoke of his plans to adopt Tien and recognize him as his son and heir. Unfortunately, these plans are cut short when a group of 5 of the instructor's pupils turn against him. For the purposes of keeping this video short, this will play out in a similar fashion to Yang and his group in the original Sifu. Tien then retreats to an old Buddhist temple away from the city, hell-bent on training for 5 years to exact vengeance on his would-be foster father. Tien is heavily inspired by Tony Jaa and his 2 series, Umbak and the Protector. The combat system would be designed around Muay Thai, and more specifically the style Muay Baran, an ancient Muay Thai style that uses knees, elbows, punches, kicks, and headbutts. I chose this style as it would allow a larger diversity of unique animations compared to more modern competitive Muay Thai. Something I didn't mention in my Sifu review was how good all the parkour movements were. Scaling walls, leaping over gaps, and rolling over countertops, they all feel smooth, and it would be great to see this expanded upon in the sequel. Chase sequences where you have to escape large groups of enemies to engage them in smaller batches. It would still take a linear approach, but these would make for an exciting break from combat that doesn't slow down the pace of the gameplay. More vaults, and a safety roll button that if not pressed could cause death for the player, keeping it engaging. One of my small criticisms of Sifu was that there wasn't enough stuff to do between missions at the player base, so let's add some stuff to do. A tree kicking minigame would be cool with a timed slider button press a la Fable 2. Get 5 in a row perfectly, and you'll break the tree and get a 5 to 10% damage boost for your next mission. There also could be some light parkour / climbing to do around the temple for story collectibles and impressive views. And finally, let's discuss the setting, Thailand. There are a number of places unique in Thailand that would make for great combat zones and levels. A bustling Bangkok street market would be a great place for the new parkour mechanics. Skyscraper nightclubs, leading the player to work their way to the very top to take down the gang leader, would allow for great sound design as well as give you some impressive heights to throw enemies from. Buddhist temples built in the countryside can have a mystical element reminiscent of the original game, while also being pleasing to look at. Let's leave it there for Tien and now move on to Danny. Danny was a heavyweight British contender back in his day. Having followed in the footsteps of his father, a respectable contender himself, Danny was wearing boxing gloves from the age of 3 and grew up training in his father's public gym. Over the years, he developed proficient speed, footwork, and a huge amount of punching power and endurance. While punching his way through the other boxers of his country, his father died to cancer, leaving him to fend for his younger brother James by himself. With Danny's time being taken up with training, James fell into drug use and died due to a spoiled batch of a new street drug called haze. Danny found out his brother died leading up to his championship fight, causing Danny to forsake his championship to grieve for his brother. At the funeral, Danny vowed to take down the new dealers and get justice for James. Danny, being a boxer, means he can effectively slip, duck, and dodge punches, which works well with Sifu's current system. There are endless combinations with the player switching between jabs, crosses, hooks, uppercuts, and body shots to knock out enemies. This version of Sifu 2 would have a boxing gym as the player base, with some light mini-games for the player to kill some time on. A boxing bag mini-game so the player can rapidly work their way through the combo list and memorize them. A weight section where the player would have to progressively hold the trigger buttons to complete reps, which could have slight damage bonuses, helping players beat their original times on missions. Being based in London, we have a number of good fight locations that offer lots of interactivity. A classic British pub where you can throw pint glasses and bottles at enemies, working your way through the restaurant, kitchen, outside area, flats above, and finally the top floor. An underground train station mission starting you out at the station itself, working your way onto the train for a dynamic camera change fight, and fighting your way to the next stop. Everything from nightclubs to drug dens to countryside high-class estates. Both of these characters come from public gyms, meaning that if Slowcap wanted to implement co-op, probably in a different section to the main game, they could do so while having an in-game explanation for the second player. This would be good for extra challenges, where the two players have to deal with more enemies and two bosses at once, while still keeping the single-player experience intact. One slight issue with these two concepts is that I haven't worked in Sifu's death system. This would be easier to implement with Tien, as Buddhism is the dominant shared religion between China and Thailand. However, I'm struggling with Danny. Perhaps his father once travelled to China for a fight and somehow the reviving medallion came into his possession? I appreciate that's underdeveloped, but A new fighting style and cultural basis for the sequel would be a welcome change. However, I'm sure whatever Slowclap has prepared will be a treat, whatever the outcome. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe and leave your own thoughts on whether you agree, disagree, or have any ideas for the sequel of your own. Peace and love.